CNN host Don Lemon gets absolutely destroyed by a British commentator. Ron DeSantis shreds Martha's Vineyard for its deportation of illegal immigrants. And Joe Biden has his latest blunder regarding illegal immigration. All that and more here on The Bald Brad Show. Welcome to The Bald Brad Show. It is Wednesday, September 21st, and as always, I couldn't be happier than to spend these fine mornings doing The Bald Brad Show and hanging out with all of you, my friends and true American patriots, where we come together as a community of conservatives and Republicans, go over the stories of the day, and bring you all the news and information you need to know about. So if you want to join us here at The Bald Brad Show and you haven't already, what are you doing? Hit that like and subscribe button. If you're over at Rumble, hit the plus and give us a comment down below. And if you're listening on any of the podcast airwaves, Apple, Google, Spotify, heck, folks, you can listen to us and find us anywhere and everywhere. Leave us a lovely 5-star review. Not only would you be helping a conservative, but most importantly, you'd be supporting getting conservative thought and ideas out there to new viewers who haven't seen our content or our channel. So your help and support would be greatly appreciated. And also, folks, don't forget that bell notification. We upload multiple times a day, Monday through Friday, 7 days a week. And also, hit that like and subscribe button. With that being said, let's go ahead and roll into our lead story of the day. And folks, it is a doozy. This is one you need. A nice little pick-me-up of watching Don Lemon of CNN just completely get shellacked right upside the head regarding reparations. I mean, he gets destroyed. He gets eviscerated by this royal British commentator. And I mean, if you want to talk about spinning something on the progressive left, reparations is where to do it. And they've been talking about this for decades in America. I mean, heck, more than decades, to be quite frank. They've been talking about it ever since slavery is pretty much abolished. They were looking for reparations. And look, we tried it. The Republicans tried it, and it didn't go through. Why didn't it go through? There was a party that didn't want it to happen. What was it called? Oh, it's called the Democrat Party. That's what it was. Yes. So hundreds of years later, they're asking for a handout, of which are there people that are feeling the effects of slavery? Yes, there are. But there's some people that were never enslaved. Their family was never enslaved, never happened, but they're still asking for handouts and reparations, which is mind-boggling. So ever since Queen Elizabeth passed away, you have MSNBC, CNN, these leftist progressive media outlets going after the British crown, the royals, and requesting, and in other places also demanding that they pay reparations to the colonies and also those that are descendants of slaves. Anybody and everybody that can get their hands on the money, they're basically asking for the British royal crown, the monarchy, the empire to pay out these reparations. And folks, if you want a little pick-me-up on this morning, it's hump day, it's Wednesday, this is the video for it. Because like I said, Don Lemon, when I say left speechless, literally doesn't know what to say after she's done talking. Let's go ahead and roll this one.
Well, this is coming when, there's all of this wealth and you hear about it comes as England is facing rising costs of living, a living crisis, austerity budget cuts, and so on. And then you have those who are asking for reparations for colonialism, and they're wondering, $100 billion, $24 billion here and there, $500 million there. Some people want to be paid back, and members of the public are wondering, why are we suffering when you are, you have all of this vast wealth? Those are legitimate concerns.
Well, I think you're right about reparations in terms of if people want it, though, what they need to do is you always need to go back to the beginning of a supply chain. Where was the beginning of the supply chain? That was in Africa. And when across the entire world, when the slavery was taking place, which was the first nation in the world that abolished slavery? The first nation in the world to abolish it. It was started by William Wilberforce, was the British. In Great Britain, they abolished slavery. 2,000 naval men died on the high seas trying to stop slavery. Why? Because the African kings were rounding up their own people. They had them on cages waiting in the beaches. No one was running into Africa to get them. And I think you're totally right. If reparations need to be paid, we need to go right back to the beginning of that supply chain and say who was rounding up their own people and having them handcuffed in cages. Absolutely. That's where they should start. And maybe, I don't know, the descendants of those families where they died in the high seas trying to stop the slavery, that those families should receive something too, I think, at the same time.
It's an interesting discussion, Hilary. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. We'll continue.
So he doesn't say anything else after. He goes on a whole different segment. He's not talking about reparations anymore. What a spin. I mean, this is one of the greatest spins I've ever seen. Because look, I'm not for reparations. That time is long and gone. There was an opportunity for it. Does it suck? Yes. I think reparations should have been put through at that present time when slavery was abolished. The conversation should have been had and it should have been implemented. But like I said, Democrats didn't want to go through with it. Oddly enough, now they want to push through it and have present day people pay for the injustices of those in the past. It doesn't work like that. I didn't enslave anybody. I don't want slavery. I don't like it. I think it's evil. But I shouldn't have to pay with my tax dollars somebody else's injustices that happened hundreds and sometimes even thousands of years ago, depending on which historical period you want to talk about. And I love how she spins and goes, look, let's start a supply chain issue. Who was sitting here wheeling and dealing all these people? Oh, it was African Americans. So I love this spin. And you know what? It just shows how bad Jen Psaki was at her job. And don't even get me started with Karine Jean-Pierre on her spinning and just blatant lying and just reading out of a notebook. This lady here is doing a fabulous job. I mean, I haven't seen somebody spin something like this against the progressive left since Kayleigh McEnany was in the White House as the White House press secretary. So kudos to this lady. And quite frankly, too, it's really an argument that I haven't heard before. And I've heard a lot of freaking arguments. I love doing this. I love politics. I love hearing the progressive left's idea, the right side's ideas, and kind of seeing which ones work, which ones are the best. I haven't seen anybody come up with this one where it's like, let's look at the supply chain issue. Let's go after those that kind of started it. Let's go after those that were supplying everybody with slaves. It was black people supplying black people with slaves, or at least not supplying necessarily, but selling black people, blacks selling blacks. And there's also white people that are enslaved as well. So this whole idea that it was just black people, blaming it on England, blaming it on America. Everybody had slaves at the time, but they always want to go for that handout. And look, again, I can't emphasize this enough. There are people that are feeling the effects of slavery today. But what I have this open-ended question with is it so much the oppression that happened in the past and you're feeling the dramatic effects today, or is more the dramatic effects your personal financial behavior? I tend to believe that it only takes one generation to fork your family tree. There's a lot of sacrifice involved with it, but a lot of people have done it in America. Both immigrants and both people that were immigrants and oppressed at the same time were able to fork their family tree in one generation by making good financial decisions and sacrificing. So my question is that why are there people that are feeling the effects of slavery and Jim Crow today not able in one generation to fork their family tree and are asking for reparations? Again, is it so much the oppression that happened in the past and the suppression, or is it more the financial behavior that they're making today? The reason why I bring it up is because we just had a lot of handouts given out called the student loan debt forgiveness by Joe Biden. And that's only going to last 5 years. What they expect is seeing that $1.7 trillion in student loans repeat itself and come back to fruition once again in roughly 5 years, meaning the financial behavior of individuals is not going to change. So just because you give people money doesn't mean that they're going to make good decisions with that money. We saw that with the COVID-19 stimulus checks. So once again, I personally don't believe reparations is going to do anything. And furthermore, as a math teacher, I have no idea the calculation and the amount of variables that you can go into in terms of how much money some families should receive. Were some families more oppressed than other people? Did some families work on the plantations longer than others versus others, which would affect the monetary gains they would have had that could be extrapolated into capital gains and investment opportunities? Like, how do you calculate all that? Or are we just giving everybody a lump sum? Because that's kind of screwed up. There's diversity within slaves as well, too, right? Like I said, there's some people that were enslaved longer. There's some people that received their freedom earlier than others. So what's the distribution? What's the calculation on that? But we can't have that conversation because, oh, it's too messed up, or, oh, you're thinking too far into it. Just give people the money. Well, if we're going to give people money, we should give people money the right way, right? We should look at these calculations, but government never wants to do that. The Democrats don't want to do that. Why? Because it's somebody else's money. And whenever it's somebody else's money, then no longer do we want to do these calculations. No longer do we want to look at the variables. No longer do we actually want to see where and when and who this money is going to. Because again, it's always somebody else's money that's paying for these handout, i.e. COVID-19 stimulus checks. Not everybody should have got one. We should have done the calculation for those that lost their jobs should apply for the checks. Those that still have their jobs maybe shouldn't have gotten the checks. A $600 check's not going to pay for your rent in some areas. You can go endlessly with this conversation and make that analogy connection to reparations. So I think my point has come across here. And for those that are avid viewers of the Bald Brad Show, we've been talking about reparations for quite some time. I think y'all know my viewpoint on it. I'm not for it at all. Again, I think it is wrong for having people like us today who don't like slavery. We don't like racism. We think it's evil. Can't be any more clear than that. But I didn't do anything wrong. The people living today didn't do anything wrong, and they should not have to pay for the injustices of those in the past. Moving into our next story of the day. Oh boy, the shellacking continues, folks. The destruction continues from the Republicans going towards the progressive left regarding immigration. You got the great the greatest governor of all time, in my opinion, Governor Ron DeSantis, just putting a shellacking on Martha's Vineyard for deporting these illegal immigrants faster than they could freaking say illegal immigrant themselves. Because boy, oh boy, the hypocrisy is outrageous from the progressive left. I mean, that's basically what our show is about, right? Spotting out the hypocrisy, the blatant lying from the White House, the Democrat Party, and the progressive left. And it's astonishing how, they're complaining about these Republicans sending and busing these migrants all over without giving them notice. I mean, that was one of the main arguments of like, they didn't tell us that they were coming. But yet Joe Biden's flying illegal immigrants under the dark of the night to all these other places without notice as well. I mean, literally, they're uncharted planes, or at least unlabeled planes, and they're just flying under the dead of the night, literally parking where there's no lights on the tarmac, where you have security guards coming up with body cam footage going, who are you guys? You have no tracking number. You're staying away from cameras, and you have literally the guy in front of them saying, yeah, we can't have cameras around. We didn't want to park under the lights because we don't want any news cameras to see what we're doing. It's amazing what the Biden administration has been doing and spinning and lying just blatantly about these illegal immigrants. I mean, if you recall, literally Kamala Harris looked at Chuck Todd of Meet the Press and was like, it's secure. The border's secure. She doubled down on it. Like a minute and a half apart from each other, she doubled down. Karine Jean-Pierre then with Peter Doocy doubled down as well. Even furthermore, she told Peter Doocy like a week before that they weren't walking across the border, that it wasn't happening. So the gaslighting is real. And you have Governor Ron DeSantis. We got a phenomenal clip here of calling out the hypocrisy from the Democrat Party, the hypocrisy from the progressive left, and the hypocrisy and the blatant lying from the Biden administration. You're going to love it, folks. Let's go ahead and roll it.
Yes. Representative Jeffries, he said, and I'm quoting him, he said, you and Governor Abbott need to start acting like governors and stop acting like human traffickers. First, what is your response to that? And second, is there a second migrant flight going from Texas to Delaware?
So when Biden is flying these people all over the fruited plain in the middle of the night, I didn't hear a peep out of those people, okay? I didn't hear a peep. I haven't heard a peep.
Did anybody just see Ron DeSantis' movement here? I've seen this clip once. I didn't pick up on that movement, but that's a movement of you're about to get an ass kicking. Can we just watch that again? Watch his movement. Watch his little pep. And he's like, I'm just going to destroy you right now. Just watch this. Watch his little pep.
Flying these people all over the fruited plain in the middle of the night. I didn't hear a peep out of those people, okay? I didn't hear a peep.
Right here, right here, right here.
I haven't heard a peep about all the people that have been told by Biden you can just come in, and they're being abused by the cartels. They're drowning in the Rio Grande. You had 50 that died in some shed in Texas. I heard no outrage about any of that. I haven't heard outrage about all the fentanyl that's come across the border that's killing Americans in record numbers. I don't hear outrage about the criminal aliens that have gotten through and have then victimized people, not only in Florida, but all throughout the country. I didn't hear any outrage about that. The only thing I hear them getting upset about is you have 50 that end up in Martha's Vineyard. Then they get really upset. And I'm sorry. Those migrants were being treated horribly by Biden. They were hungry, homeless. They had no opportunity at all. The state of Florida, it was volunteer, offered transport to sanctuary jurisdictions because it's our view that, one, the border should be secured. And we want to have Biden reinstitute policies like remain in Mexico and making sure that people aren't overwhelming. But short of that, if you believe in open borders, then it's the sanctuary jurisdictions that should have to bear the brunt of the open borders. So that's what we're doing. But what happened was they were provided an ability to be in the most posh sanctuary jurisdiction maybe in the world. And obviously it's sad that Martha's Vineyard people deported them the next day. They could have absorbed this. They chose not to. But what it shows is if 50 was a burden on one of the richest places in our country, what about all these other communities that have been overrun with hundreds or thousands? It shows you what now these policies are on the front burner. people need to be talking about. Biden can't defend his policies of open borders. It's doing huge damage to our country. It's costing a lot of money. It's costing lives with the drugs that are pouring across. And so the question is why are you supporting Biden's policies? Why don't you step up and tell him you're failing and let's do it differently? Because you know what? He inherited a border that wasn't like this. He has created the crisis. But now at least we know nobody can deny that there's a crisis. Everybody now knows, and it was only because you had to have the elite who want to have the cost on everybody else, and they don't want to have to shoulder that. That's the only reason now people are talking about this.
That's right. There's so many things that he touched on there that we could do an entire episode on, but it's true. You have massive fentanyl coming across. You have these illegal immigrants that are coming across and actually murdering Americans. They're raping Americans. They're doing all sorts of things. You have Venezuela emptying out prisons and sending their criminals to the southern border. You have terrorists coming across the border. Biden doesn't want to do anything. And remember under Jen Psaki when we first started the Bald Brad Show and how we covered her saying, well, it's just a challenge. Not a big deal. There's 100,000 people coming across the border. And now everybody's calling it a crisis except the Biden administration. They still think it's just a challenge. And who they putting the blame on? They're putting the blame on Trump, which is so freaking mind-blowing because you didn't have these kind of numbers under Trump. No American president has had these kind of numbers. And people go, Brad, you're being exaggerating the data. You're being foolish. You're being silly. You're just not making sense anymore, man. That is literally a true data point. There is no president ever in American history that has allowed this many illegal immigrants into the country. There's over 2.1 million. We've finally broken the 2 million mark in 1 year. It's never happened before. And we still have more months to go. We're looking at roughly 2.5, and those are the ones we know about. It's well over 3 million people, you guys, in 1 year. We know there's well over 800,000 gotaways. Well over that. So this whole thing he's created is mind-blowing. And like Ron DeSantis said, you send them 50 illegal immigrants, 50 people, they can't even handle it. And it's one of the most wealthiest places in all of America. But yet you're making these poor counties, these poor localities on the southern end of the border have to deal with all this. To put in perspective, the dispatchers, the first responders, they don't know what to do at the southern border because there's so many 911 calls coming through. The 911 calls are literally gridlocking. They're jammed. People can't get the assistance they need because of everything that's going on at the southern border. Think about that. Think about that. You're trying to help your loved one and you can't even get through to a 911 call because it's gridlocked because of all the illegal immigrants that Joe Biden's allowing through, of which is a freaking function that you're supposed to be allowed to use because your taxpayers' dollars are paying for it, and you can't even utilize it because of a problem of which illegal immigrants are coming through, shellacking the system and infrastructure at the southern border. And so he says 50 there, and people are just outraged. The left are just outraged. How could you do it? How could you do it, Ron? You're sending them to a sanctuary city. Oh my God, how could you do that? And you're not going to give them notice, Ron? Isn't that freaking mind-blowing that you have Democrats and progressive left that have been touting for decades, 20 plus years, being sanctuary cities, right to shelter, and you send them a few thousand, in this case 50, they can't take care of them, you guys. Just try to fathom that for a moment. And they're going to blame Republicans for all this. I mean, it is so freaking head spinning. And it's not like I'm talking about this without having thought about it, right? I come on the show going, okay, spent some time thinking about it. Hell, for illegal immigration, which is one of my top priorities other than the freaking national debts, it's over $30.1 trillion. Don't even get me started on that one. These are major issues for me. And I can't, for the love of God, wrap my head around the Democrat Party, their handling of illegal immigration, and why they think it's okay. The only thing that makes sense to me so far is the progressive left have no morality. And people go, whoa, that's crazy, man. No. If you look at the progressive left, not necessarily the Democrat Party, they could be involved in that in some way, shape, or form as well, but the progressive left does not have any morality built into their thinking as well as their decision-making process. Who does a fabulous job of demonstrating this is Dennis Prager of PragerU, does a phenomenal talking point regarding the lack of morality from the progressive left. But when it comes to hounding the Republicans, all of a sudden they put themselves on a moral high ground above the rest of us in terms of their policies, but their policies do nothing but destroy this country from the inside out, i.e. illegal immigration. That's just one of many examples coming from the progressive left. Moving into our last story of the day, We got this freaking president just having more blunders, you guys, just speaking a bunch of nonsense regarding open borders. I mean, there is a reason, you guys, why they don't have him on that podium answering the press's questions, because he answers things like this. I mean, can you imagine just the horrified look on the White House press secretary's face, Karine Jean-Pierre, knowing that Joe Biden was supposed to leave the room without answering any questions, and he answers questions. Wait till we get to the clip here in a moment. Well, you have Biden conducting a pretty rare speaking engagement with the press, but when he does, it's apparent that he has no idea what the hell he is talking about. On Tuesday, a reporter asked Biden, why is the border more overwhelmed under your watch? It's a straightforward question. Should be a straightforward answer, which we see with Karine Jean-Pierre as well. Sometimes people give her a layup of a question and she can't answer it correctly. Biden repealed practically all aspects of border security implemented by former President Donald Trump. Democrats have constantly campaigned on soft immigration policies, and Biden's Veep is pushing amnesty as we speak. Let that sink in. Right now, we're paying roughly $120 to $160 billion a year just for the illegal immigrants that come under Joe Biden alone. $120 to $160 billion, give or take, somewhere in that range, just for the illegal immigrants that Joe Biden has let in. It's like $122 million a day. Folks, we have roughly 22 million illegal immigrants into this country. How much do you think it's costing us with all those people, with the services and everything else? And people go, oh, well, they have ITIN cards, they pay taxes. Not in proportion of what they're receiving, folks. Not in proportion of what they're receiving. This clip, let's just get to it. I don't want you to wait any longer. It's an amazing clip here from Joe Biden being asked this question. Let's go ahead and roll. Let's see if we can hear it. Let's make sure the audio's up. All right, let's go ahead and roll it.
On the border, why is the border more overwhelmed under your watch, Mr. President?
Because there are three countries that are never have. There are fewer immigrants coming from Central America and from Mexico. This is a totally different circumstance. What's on my watch now is Venezuela, Cuba, and Nicaragua. And the ability to send them back to those states is not rational. You could send them back and have them, we're working with Mexico and other countries to see if we can stop the flow. But that's the difference. Thank you.
Well, what is your administration doing, Mr. President?
Looks like he's sending migrants to Delaware. Do you have any comment or response to that, sir?
He should come visit. We have a beautiful shoreline.
Does that look like a president, you guys, that one knows what the hell is going on? I don't know if I'm more impressed with him actually taking a question for the press for the first time in a long-ass time, an unvetted one, or the fact that he knows how to get out of that Oval Office. So, what's better, folks? I don't know. What's more impressive? Because if you recall, when he was taking a bite of ice cream, and everyone's like, oh, what's that ice cream, Mr. President? He goes, chocolate chip ice cream. He takes a bite, everybody's like impressed. Or the guy rides his bicycle 10 feet without falling down. Everybody's like, oh my God, look at what he's doing. And I mean that most seriously. I mean, Joy Behar was astounded. Joy Behar, the co-host of The View, was astounded the fact that the president exercises. Oh, he's up and running every day. Really? Okay. Okay. I don't know what you classify as running, Joy, but that man ain't doing it. I don't care what you say. That ain't running. So you heard his response, right? Well, you can't expect the fact checkers of the legacy media to hold Biden's feet to the fire, okay? So it isn't true that fewer illegal aliens from Mexico and the Northern Triangle countries are entering the country under Biden than ever before. It's not true. And you don't have to go back very far to prove it, folks, okay? Per the U.S. Customs and Border Protection data by the New York Post, a left-leaning outlet, nearly 700,000 aliens arrived at the U.S. southern border from Mexico in fiscal year 2022. You don't have to look back very far, as I just mentioned. More than 400,000 arrived at the border from Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador. During that time, that same time, more than 730,000 individuals from other countries attempted to enter the country at the southern border. Under President Trump, the highest number of illegal aliens from the Northern Triangle in a fiscal year, any given fiscal year, was just above 600,000. So him to say this hasn't happened before and given his whole cockamamie thing, absolute lie. Absolute lie. The fewest was under 150,000 under the Trump administration. Illegal aliens from Mexico never topped more than 350,000 in one fiscal year under Trump. If you add up the number of migrants from places other than Mexico and Central American nations who arrived at the border during the entirety of the Trump administration, The entire 4 years of the Trump administration, the total figure is nowhere near, nowhere close, not even the same ballpark of what it's like under the Biden administration. He sat there, looked them dead in the eye, and didn't have a damn clue what the hell he was talking about. It's no wonder that everything's crumbling around us. The foreign policy, domestic policy, gas prices, which are going down, but they're still way up than what they were before. You have the whole immigration issue, the recession issue, of which they redefined. I'm shocked they haven't redefined everything else that's happening, whether that's freaking China and Taiwan, Ukraine and Russia, Iran, the U.S., freaking the debacle what's going on in the U.S.-Mexico border. Have they redefined immigration yet? Hell, let me know, folks, because it wouldn't be surprising if they did. Under the Trump administration, the highest number was 600,000, and the numbers of what we saw under Trump are nowhere near, again, what we're seeing under Biden. If you want to look at percentage-wise, let's flip the script, because a lot of times the White House will be like, oh, well, let's talk about proportions. Let's do a little quick number crunch. Percentage-wise, there are now fewer illegal aliens from Mexico and Central America, but that is only because the border crossings have increased on the whole. So because the proportion has changed, you're seeing the numbers percentage-wise as change as well. Under Biden, Border Patrol has recorded nearly 5 million encounters at the southern border. Yes, folks, you heard that correctly. They've encountered 5 million. That includes the 850,000 known gotaways, who have entered the country untouched by authorities. So 1 million people, folks, that's a lowball number. Over 1 million people have entered the country untouched by authorities. Perhaps the federal government had illegal immigration under control. America could afford to process and handle asylum seekers from communist places like Venezuela, Cuba, Nicaragua. Remember when Bernie Sanders was all about Cuba? Remember he's all about the Soviet Union so much that he honeymooned? But now that those places are crumbling, Venezuela, Cuba, the places of which, again, Bernie Sanders, a socialist, love to talk about, and now that they're freaking just running down in the dumps, now all of a sudden they don't want to go there. Now we're receiving immigrants from there. Based on the sheer mass of illegal immigration, clearly the U.S. cannot secure its borders. Biden is correct that we have a totally different circumstance, but that's only because of Biden's own policies that's caused this debacle and to continue to fuel the crisis in the first place, again, of which he doesn't want to call a crisis. It's just a challenge to him, one of which he can't freaking figure out and fix. And it's no wonder the dude hits a golf ball backwards, okay? He gets lost. He doesn't know his own offices, and I mean that so sincerely. He doesn't know where his own office is. The freaking Secret Service has to guide him. This is a guy that is told to sit down and wait, to take a breath practically on a note card, and who to take questions from and their names and what questions are going to be asked to him. I can go on for freaking hours and days with this, folks. This guy sucks at his job, and his admin sucks as well. Let me know what you think about all this in the comments below, folks. Thank you for always listening to me rant. I'm sure you feel my pain and suffering just as all of you do as well. Not so much pain and suffering, right? That's a little bit of an exaggeration, but just the debacle that's going on right now with the Democrats and the progressive left running the show, blaming Republicans for everything, even though they're the one that runs all freaking 3 branches of government. I'm trying to end the show. Don't get me started. As always, hit that like and subscribe, folks. I love all of you. You are true American patriots. I don't care what the Biden administration says. We are not a threat to this country. We are not a threat to democracy. We only want what's best for Americans and what's best for everybody living within our walls here, as long as our freaking can secure them. With that being said, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Folks, I will see you tomorrow here on The Bald Brad Show.